That's what I'm talking about. We are here, 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 people. Hey. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Hey, you're the you know that is the song. That's a song for yeah, okay? I said it. I said it. Hey, you're the you know that what that song means is it means that you are one of a kind. And you know what? Today I am so blessed to have women that I find that they are one of a kind. They're not just types of women. These women, they are needle movers. You know what I mean? They are needle movers. They are inspiration. They are very motivated. They are talented. They're everything that you know what your grandmother wanted to be. I'm telling you that. Listen, listen. This is WNHHLP 103.5 FM. You are here on Thabisa and Friends show. I am so happy today that I have these wonderful women with me today. I have got today Stacey Graham Hunt and Adrian Jefferson, and later on I will be graced by our beautiful and our very own Ro, talented, I must add, Ro Goodwin, and she's going to be here and give us a special performance later on this interview that I'm having today with this wonderful woman. I am so happy to have you here, ladies. First of all, I have just got to tell people that have never seen you guys before, which I doubt there is because you guys are busy. You are everywhere. If you're not in newspapers, you are on radio shows. And, you know, I'm not sure what's News 8 because I think they need to be calling you. We got to see you on TV. We got to see you all the time, right? I have today these wonderful ladies. I've got Stacey Graham Hunt and Adrian Jefferson here, and we're here to talk about anything between, you know, from diversity, inclusion, access, and equity, and everything in between that. You know what I mean? And I'm here to check up on them, how they're doing. But first of all, I want to give you a proper intro on who these ladies are, just in case you've never seen them. So I have here Stacey Graham Hunt, who is a winner of the National Association of Bank Journalists Salute to Excellence Awards. Stacey Graham Hunt is a columnist and author who writes about race and identity. She is passionate about Black people telling their own stories and preserving their own histories. Stacey has blogged about her personal coming of age experiences, and she compiled those stories into a book called Processing Pain, which was published in April 2016. Stacey here is currently with the Arts Council of Greater New Haven. And if you want to know her, what she does there, she is a memberships director. But Stacey, if you want to find out what she has done in terms of her writing and blogging, you can go check it out on the Black Enterprise magazine and in New Haven Register and the Connecticut Post. That's where you can find some of her writings. Welcome, Stacey.
Hi, thank you, Thabisa.
I'm happy you're here. I'm happy you're here. And of course, I have the wonderful and the beautiful and the one woman that I actually feel like has helped me sort of add to my CV. I did an MC event that she hired me for once upon a time, and it was a wonderful, it was a wonderful experience for me. And yeah, I've got Adrian here is an executive in arts administration and cultural equity with expertise in program design, event and media production, grant making, external affairs, community partnerships, and new program initiatives. She specializes in professional development programming for young creative professionals, people of color, and she wait a minute. and social change. I almost confused myself. She's a thought leader, advisor, and educator pertaining to issues of diversity, equity, access, and inclusion. She has dedicated her career to creating programs that result in a more equitable, vibrant, and sustainable arts landscape. Adrian is currently the director of the Department of Arts and Cultural Affairs for the city of New Haven. Adrian, you too, welcome. I'm happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you, Thabisa. It's great to be here. Hi, Stacy.
Adrian.
Hi.
Good to have you here. I see Ro is here. Ro, hi. Show your face. You want to say hi a little bit before you can disappear again? Yes, there you are. This is the girl I was talking about earlier. The talented. I love her music. Ro, I've seen her perform in many events.
Yes.
Events, and every time she's performed, she's always leading me through like, can I just take you home with me? And you just sing at my request any day, anytime. Thank you for being here, Ro. Welcome.
Nice to see you all. Thank you.
Where do we begin, ladies? A lot is happening. A lot is happening all over the world, and everybody's feeling stressed. Everybody's feeling is on high anxiety. And I called you here today because one of the things that I keep on hearing coming up, just in people around, in terms of in workplaces, in the arts, is there's not enough inclusion. There's not enough diversity, and there's not enough, it's equity. And I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this and what it means. What does it mean? Diversity, equity, inclusivity, access. What does that mean? You take it, ladies. Let me know. Tell us. We want to know. What does that mean?
I'm looking at Stacy because I don't know if she wants to start.
I'll start. I actually think that's a good question, and I think all of those terms are starting to get muddled. And I think I'm starting to think people don't really know what diversity is anymore because they're claiming diversity with only Black populations or Black engagement of 6% or less than 10%, sometimes 5%, sometimes 2%. And that's being praised as diversity. So
that's a good point. That is a good point.
I don't know if there's I don't know if I have that definition right now.
Right.
What I would like to see is, and I think the idea would be, equal access for people and having people feel comfortable and included when they are in spaces, and just going above that level of just making sure there's one or two Black people there.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, just to add to what you're saying, like about people, a lot of people think that diversity just means a certain type of people in terms of our skins, like the brown people or Black people, especially, and that's it. But diversity is bigger than that. Yes, we are individuals, that happen to come from different groups, right? That's the diversity when you look at the people's culture, people's religion, people's you've got older, you've got young, you've got all these different that's diversity, all of those things, different cultures. And when it comes to workplaces, once the people in the boards or whoever hires recognizes that people are different, it's not just the colors of them, but also demographics, in terms of age groups, in terms of circumstances where they come from, in terms of religion, so that you make space for that in their workplaces. If someone plays in the day, you want to know individually what works for them, and you want to give access to all of those things. Like, okay, in the day you pray, so how do we make sure that that happens for you, right? Is there anything you want to add, Adrian?
Yeah, I agree with both you and Stacy. I think that, number one, it is muddled. People get very confused when we're saying the word diversity. Like, first of all, it's becoming a buzzword. Everyone wants to use the word diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they have no idea what that actually means. And I think that we need to start talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and anti-racism. Those are the two that are missing out of this DEI statement. Because to your point, Thabisa, when you're saying diversity, that could mean a variety of different things. It doesn't necessarily just pertain to race. So race is obviously the main factor that comes up when we're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, but there's also geographic diversity, immigration, there's LGBTQIA+, there's all of these different distinct marginalized groups and ways in which you can be diverse. Diversity of thought is one of them. So let's not get that confused with anti-racism when we're talking about Blackness. And I think a lot of times people are saying, oh, well, I'm diverse, and they're not, and they're saying, well, because I have this token, to Stacey's point, I have these token people on my board, and now I'm diverse. But it's like, no, you actually are more talking about justice and what it means to take a stance for against racism, and being able to be, anti-racist in your organization. Right. So I think that there's a lot of confusion there. But really, when we're looking at this in the landscape of arts, in the context of arts, we're looking at ways that you are bringing to the forefront marginalized groups and making sure that you are providing access, breaking down barriers, and being inclusive in all varieties, in all ways, in your programming, through your staffing, on your board, in order to really say that you are intentionally being diverse, equitable, and inclusive.
That is brilliant, and I'm happy that you added those last two bits in there as well. You know what comes into my mind when I think of when people talk about DEI, is that everybody, like, how do we move from a point of just paper thin and having all these talking points? How do we actually make sure that arts organizations and companies are actually kept accountable, and what they say they have and do on paper? How do we make sure that they report back and give us their reports that ensures that they have done these trainings, and they pay the people that are doing these trainings? Because that's also another thing. People will always bring about a person of color or person from a marginalized community to say, we've hired this person to give us a test on how we can do these things, but they don't actually pay these people. They just and it's a lack of respect as well, because to bring somebody to show you how to demonstrate to you how to do something, that's their time, and there is budgets for those things, and they need to be compensated for this, but they don't get compensated in some places. But just going back to my question is that, how do we make sure though that companies, arts organizations, the museums, the art galleries, all of these places actually meet these criteria and do what they say they're going to do in the papers? Ladies?
I think that so it depends on what type of entity you are. First of all, are you a nonprofit? Are you a for-profit? That will really determine the hierarchical system within your organization. But if you're a nonprofit, let's say we're focusing on nonprofit arts organizations. Many of these nonprofit arts organizations receive grant funding from funders. It's going to be up to the funders to really start to lay out a very clear guidelines on what the criteria needs to be in order for you to even apply for funding. And that might be, your board needs to look not just token inclusive, but very inclusive in your practices and in your theories and your ideologies. Same thing with staffing. How are you being diverse and intentional in your staffing? And then programming, what does that really look like? Because you can always tell, I come from grant making. So you can always tell when someone's trying to adhere to a grant versus what they really represent as an organization. So I think ultimately, for accountability purposes, for a nonprofit organization that receives funding, it comes down to the funders for them to be anti-racist and to have a DEI plan that then trickles down to the arts organizations.
Right. I mean, I don't know if you want to add anything else, Stacey Graham, there in terms of how do we ensure.
One thing I was thinking is that there has to be a way for us as Black customers to give feedback to white organizations and for them to receive it. So if I go to a theater and and I subscribe to this theater and there's not one Black play, I have to be able to report that to whoever's in charge, the audience director, the marketing person, and they have to take that information and do something with it. One of the things I really have been talking about is the same way that we are able to report sexual harassment, we should also be able to report kind of racial experiences that we're having in organizations. And I don't think, everyone's becoming anti-racist, which is a step. But I think there has to be, over time, a way for us to report what we're experiencing, and then give these organizations an opportunity to respond to what we're experiencing. And then that can be a way for them to have on paper, that happened, this is how we address them, and this is how we're going to move forward with our programming our mission, our values, you know, in the customer experience.
Yeah, and talking
See,
about
can I add? Oh, go ahead. No, I
no,
just wanted to
absolutely.
add that I agree. I totally agree with what Stacey is saying. As she knows, her and I think very similar in a lot of ways, anyway. But I also feel that a lot of times when those complaints come in, the organization's first instinct is we need diversity training, and I think that that's problematic because diversity training and implicit bias training is not the same thing as embedding undoing racism practices into your organization, which gets you to the disproportionate numbers that we're seeing when it comes to arts organizations and who they serve in the first place. So we need arts organizations to commit and
Yeah.
not just have solidarity statements. To your
Right.
point, Thabisa, like how do we hold them accountable? But
Right.
what are you going to put out to the public? To Stacey's point, take that feedback from the community and the constituents in which you look to serve or who is in your surrounding community, and put a pledge out there for your actionable items that you're actually going to do so that
Right.
we can actually hold you accountable as a community.
Right. I mean that's brilliant. And to add as well, you know, just so you know, right now everybody's feeling intense. Everybody's doing like we're learning so much in Godspeed. Like everybody, even including people of color, they are. We also have a duty to unlearn, to learn how to unlearn. You know, because we felt inferior for so long that we started to believe it. A lot of us have started to believe it. Now, how do we? Now we're trying to switch our buttons and learn and re-love ourselves, so to speak. You know, and as
Mm-hmm.
well as well as other people that have been oppressive, whether they knew it or didn't know it. I didn't know that they were doing that by simply just embracing racist systems, right? So, like in our workforces, I feel like the CEOs and the people in the boards, they always feel they try to just simply personalize the racism only and put it and feel like, oh, it's my thing, I have to do this, and they sort of somehow put themselves in the center of things, and think that and have all these emotions about, oh, do I have to feel guilty now, and all these things that sometimes I find benign, but I feel like people need to move beyond just making it personal about themselves, because it has moved beyond just ourselves. It is the system that has been there for more than 400 years that our founding fathers have put in place, and nobody challenges that. Because that is where the actuality, the actual practical change is, to look at those policies and look at those laws and put them on the table, hands on deck. I forget the name of Mama Jennifer. Mama Jennifer said that. Everybody hands on deck, and find ways and find ways on how we can dismantle the systems. So going back to the companies and organizations, I was trying to say that the arts organizations have to check their policies, because these are the policies that keep them continuing perpetuating racist ideas and racist behaviors, you know, that prevents people from being hired, people of color being hired, because like Trevor Noah did a show one day, you know, talking about this as well, and he mentioned that, you know, almost 50% of black people won't get hired just because of the sound of their names, and they get hired, and they don't get hired, or they get hired because of what they could do possibly, in terms of their merits, you know, and their experience. But a white person gets hired because of their potential. They don't even need to have a qualifications, right? They don't even need to have qualifications for this, but they can just see potential, and they get hired, and they have a nice sounding name. And the companies need to stop that. They need to re-examine their policies and work on that. So, do you think in the arts here, even here in our own city, and let me just say this too. I am so happy that with COVID-19 we're doing things on Zoom now, because it's not only limited to New Haven, the community radio station, because I don't feel like it's community radio station when I'm talking on this show. I feel like I'm reaching South Africa. I feel like I'm reaching with the UK. I'm everywhere. Anybody who can reach me on social media, it has access to the show. So sometimes when I say it's a community radio station, I don't feel like I mean it, because my mind is not just talking about New Haven. Whatever we're talking about here it is going to be known everywhere else. So we have to be really think that we're not just talking about New Haven. But I almost lost myself with my question now. What was the question again? But do you think the companies, like the companies here, the arts organizations, are there? Do you think, Adrian, that as you're working in the arts and culture, are you guys, giving out resources to these companies and arts organizations that work with diverse, to go back on that word again, a community? Do you guys make sure that they have access to training tools and resources that will help them, structure these policies and undo these policies that they already have? Do you have that in place, or
Yeah, it will be in place. We're working on it. So you have to remember, I'm very new in my role. So I've only been in my role since February. And then after I came on, COVID-19 happened. So my department was really, really heavily involved in the economic resiliency and recovery as it pertains to creative businesses, and just businesses, period. And now with the reopening, we were also tapped to help with a lot of the reopening and what that looks like. But the priority of my department really is, first of all, developing a cultural equity plan that addresses the barriers that are in place, not just in the arts, but in all sectors and all facets of different type of businesses and infrastructures that are in place that create barriers for Black and Brown people to even participate in the arts in general. Because to address equity, you cannot just address arts. You have to address the barriers and the other systems that are in the way to actually implementing things into the arts. So yes, that's a big focus for my department. Now, as far as holding arts organizations accountable, that's a part of it, absolutely. And I think and I said a little earlier about the solidarity statements. I commend people for doing the solidarity statements, but that means nothing without action. And so, what we need to do, and what my department is working on as we speak, is a pledge that'll be very similar to what Obama did with the mayors, but a toolkit with resources for anti-racism. If you want to be an anti-racist organization, what that really means and what that looks like. And now we want to take your solidarity statements, and we actually want to hold you accountable through this checklist that we'll make public, and then have arts organizations pledge to the things that they said that they would do. This is something that we will be rolling out, and we hope that many of the arts organizations will participate in.
Wow, that's brilliant. You want to add something, Stacey?
Yes, you both reminded me. I think, Adrian, you said this earlier about anti-racism, and a lot of people think that means, okay, I'm going to start researching what it means, the history of racism. And I was thinking, when this pandemic started, the COVID-19 pandemic, when we first learned about coronavirus, we weren't trying to learn the history of coronavirus. Right. We weren't trying to learn about the cellular makeup. We weren't trying, we didn't have a vaccine ready. We weren't trying to nitpick the history of this strain of a virus. And I feel like now, when it comes to racism, now we want to, people are dying the same way they were, if not more than they were dying from COVID-19. Yet we want to play with this thing. We want to examine racism. We want to look at it from different angles. We want to sit with it for a while. And that baffles me, because we just need to move forward. The same way when we got that messaging about COVID-19, it was mask on, stand 6 feet apart from people, stay in the house. We got 3 instructions. We didn't know the history. We just knew, stay in the house, stay home, keep your mask on, use your hand sanitizer. And I think there needs to be 2 or 3 things that we're telling all the white organizations to do. And you can figure out the history later. You got a lot of time. We got 400 years worth. You're not going to find all of it out before you put your plan in place. So just can you just do one thing? Can you commit to one act of anti-racism and move forward with that and learn as you go? It's not going to be a quick process, but this whole let's research it, let's read about it, let's talk to more Black people, let's hire chief diversity officers, and so that let's just keep asking Black people what to do.
Pay them while we're at it. But
yes, and it's not our problem. Stacey is saying some stuff. She's really trying to open up a door here, but I will say this.
Yeah.
I will say this. It's not our job as Black leaders in the arts or Black people in general to solve white problems. And a white problem is white privilege. That's not something that we have to figure out. That's something that we can guide you maybe to the resources. We encourage you to do that. We want you to be allies, but it's not our job. We are already trying to navigate this world as arts leaders that are women of color, that are Black women. That's hard enough. And so now you are trying to ask us to solve that issue for you, and we just can't do that. And I think people don't understand that concept. I'm like, I just want to say, for our white allies out there, people who want to learn more, I'm not shutting it down. But what I'm saying is pick up a book. White Fragility is a great book to read, but we can't be the ones to necessarily guide you through that process because we're already trying to figure out our own stuff.
Yeah, it's like it's like educating your abuser. Like, sit down and let me teach you how to treat me better. No, I'm just gonna leave, So.
Right. A friend of mine said it in a way that I found it so funny but true. She said that we are not your oppression tourist guides. Like let me take you to a tour on how we were oppressed by you. This is, but I thought that was really funny. At the same time, I want to say again to you ladies, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. This is WNHHLP 103.5 FM. We are here with Stacey Graham Hunt and Addison Jefferson. And of course, right now we are going to have our beautiful and wonderful, talented, our very own Ro Goodwin. Please, Ro, make sure that you're ready within a second because I am calling you on right now because this lady was here with me 2 weeks ago, but because we always have so much to talk about in this show that we didn't have time to put her on and have her show us her true talents. Ro, right now, I hear that she's also working on some, tips and ways on how we can take care of ourselves, self-care. She's busy doing butters and all sorts of things. Ro, you can tell us a little bit about that because I want you to have your moment of shine and tell us what you do and what you have in mind right now and what you plan to do in the future. So Ro is going to be performing for us. You are here on WNHHLP 103.5 FM. Ro, tell us. And then you sing for us.
Okay. Sorry, I just had to come off for a second to tune my guitar really quick. But yeah, my name is Ro. I am a resident of New Haven. I'm sorry, I'm still just thinking about the conversation that we just had and about how we'll get into it later. But my name is Ro. I am a musician here in New Haven. I'm very interested in just making activism and healing and I guess self-recovery from everything that we're going through a little bit more accessible, be it through music, be it through products like handmade soaps or hand-poured soaps and shea butter products and stuff like that I've been just distributing to protesters in the city. I think there are a lot of different ways that we can invest in ourselves and invest in our own healing. And part of that, just going back to our conversation, is saying no to conversations that we're not ready for or that we don't want to have just in general with white people about placating certain things. So I think that I don't know, I just hope to provide a little bit of a respite. Cool. Did I answer your question? Sorry, you're on mute.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. I wanted to know about you and you can give us some of that magic back there. Thank you.
I don't feel close to you right now. I don't feel close to you right now. I don't feel close to sure they feel the same sometimes. I pray sometimes that I could make that change, but I stray sometimes, I delay sometimes. Anyway, I hope I get to know you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get distracted by the wind as it goes between my fingers, not distracted by my fears. Every broken thought that lingers still, I breathe until I made it all away, yeah. But I'm afraid of myself, and I shame myself for letting them take me in the first place. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in. Oh, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in. Breathe in, breathe in, breathe in, breathe out. I don't feel close to you right now, but I swear I know your name. I feel people all around, and I'm sure that they feel the same, the same. Cool.
My. Oh my, thank you so much, Ro. That was Ruth Nirimba, right? Ruth Nirimba. But she goes by Ro Goodwin. You can find her on Instagram. You can find her on Facebook as well, and she is at Ro Goodwin Music. Thank you so much, so much. So tell me a little bit about that song, Ro.
All right, so that song is called Wind. It's a song that I use, I guess, in my own like mindfulness practice of like just being aware of the feelings that are around me. Sometimes when things get a little bit overwhelming, I can tend to like kind of separate a little bit from myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of wrote that song to reel myself back in of like take a second, like feel the wind, like between your fingers, like you're here.
Right, right.
It might not feel that close to me right now, but like I am familiar with myself. And I think that as I've sung it more, it's been resonating with people in different ways. Sometimes I sing it with the intention of like, hey, like the future that we want, one where anti-racism is not like this magical, mystical, super high bar, but just like what we're here with. Like
Right.
that's the future that I want. Like I want to see like equity and justice being manifested here. So sometimes I sing this song to those ideas of like, hey, justice, I don't feel close to you right now, but
Right.
idea of who you are or of what you are.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And talking about healing as well, like I think everybody, right, at this point in time, and especially people that have been affected by racism for a very, very long time, we need to also just remember as we are busy right now, fighting through the struggles and, also in COVID-19 at the same time, trying to find means to be alive and function financially. It's really hard, but we need to also take a little bit of time, maybe a minute to just really hold ourselves, and just hug ourselves and remind ourselves that we are loved, and we need a moment just to, you know, forget about the world and focus on our own families and our own bodies and souls and emotions, and really just reconnect with ourselves in order for us to get the strength and energy so we can get out there and, continue preaching the good news that we need to be equal at some point very soon, you know. So you are listening to WNHH LP 103.5. You are here with Thabisa and friends, and we were with Thabisa Rich on Thabisa and friends. I have these wonderful guests today. I have Ro Goodwin, and I have at the same time Stacey Graham Hunt, and yes, of course, I have Adrian Jefferson. We're talking diversity, inclusion, access, equity. We're talking about all those things and everything in between that. Ladies, we need, how do we move forward? How do we move forward? How do we move forward? How do we move forward in these times? Stacey, I know you work with Arts Council. Are there any changes that have been done with the Arts Council? No, in terms of the board, in terms of the actual policies, in terms of actual change? People want to know.
So we have started to have conversations among our staff, and we've started to talk about it with some of our member organizations. We would like to put together some kind of working group or advisory group and get organizations to, similarly to the city of New Haven, commit and buy into true anti-racism actions and measurable goals. So we're kind of starting to have conversations and find out who's in, who really wants to do the work, and find out where organizations are. So someone said people are just finding out that they're white. So are you at that level, or are you already is your organization already diverse and helping Black people and other people?
Right.
Stacey, I also know before all of this became like a hot topic now, at this moment, you guys hosted the Undoing Racism workshops for the arts organization.
Yes, we did. And that was I think we did a 2-day workshop, 2 or 3 days, I can't remember anymore, but about what racism is. And it's a workshop that was created for white people to learn about racism and their roles in it, whether they think they are racist or not. And teaching them that racism belongs to white people. It's their
tool,
baggage. Yeah, tool, baggage, and all the ways that they buy into it and how it plays out in every industry. The arts. I used to work in transportation. How it plays out in transportation and separating communities from resources. I used to write about all of this stuff, and it's in every industry. It's in media. It's in newsrooms. I've been the only Black person, and I don't know how many newsrooms. So it's something that plays out in every industry.
Right.
The first step, I think, one of the first steps has to be creating some kind of system for us as Black people to report microaggressions at work.
Right.
I've had people that I've worked with tell me what colors they think look good on Black people, inviting themselves to touch my hair, and it's things we're used to, unfortunately, as Black women. But we also have to do a better job ourselves of not letting a lot of things go by. And
Right.
this would be a way for us to have a, it's for us to say, this is not okay behavior. I will not tolerate this at work. And this would also be an opportunity for organizations. We actually need to do these things.
Right. And you know what? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. Another way I feel like, as an artist and as a mom especially, is that schools need to do a better job, and as well as I know the arts play a big role in children as well in school. How recently, not long ago, there was a school here in Hamden that was, there was a teacher was making kids play a play about slavery and doing all of those
I went to that.
Right. You went to that school and you wrote an article about that. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because you wrote an article about your first, meeting with racism, so to speak.
That was at that school.
Wow.
So I overall had a good experience at the school, because my experience has been little kids. We were little kids and we didn't know.
Right.
We didn't know what being black meant. We didn't know what being white meant. Yes, I know that we're different colors, but
that's it.
But we started to learn those things, and it started to happen in that school.
Right.
So one of the things that I wrote about is how I had a crush on this white boy in my class, and we started talking on the phone. And then we graduated. We had our 6th grade graduation, and his father realized there were 2 Stacys in his class. There was a white Stacy and there was a black Stacy. So the next time I called the house, his father yelled to the guy in the background. He's like, "Is that the black Stacy or the white Stacy?" And then I found out, this boy actually did like me, but he was afraid that he said his father would kill him. That's what he said. So
wow.
It's learning these things, you learn these things when you start to get this messaging in 5th grade and 6th grade. Before that, even before that.
Right.
But you start to be able to have words for it in elementary school, and that's what's happening with the young girl who has been cast as a slave in the play at predominantly white school.
Right.
So I think, and I write about race and identity and how the two intersect because it just goes across every stage of our lives. Like even as adults, like, do we wear our hair curly to work? Do we wear it straight? Who are we at work? What language are we using at work compared to what we're using at home? And who's the real, like, which one of us is real?
Right.
Because assimilation is a real thing. Having to assimilate and feeling like we have to assimilate is a real thing, and it's highly inappropriate. The fact that people think that we as Black people, Black women in particular, because with our hair and people want to touch the hair and all this craziness, it's sad that it's become this thing where people think it's okay to try to force us to assimilate. And to be complicit in this like system that keeps perpetuating.
Right, exactly. So, and as a mom, I always feel like we as parents out here need to hold our schools accountable. We need that cycle needs to break from now on. Now that we are talking about this topic of diversity, inclusion, and equity, and everything in between, and anti-racism, and all of that, we actually need to do the real, actual work and ask real questions that matter, that actually have impact, not just to have talking points and move on the other day. It's not a trend. It should be a culture. It should be into our culture, our day-to-day lives, how schools act and teachers act. So I feel like we need to, like within even the arts and culture department, I feel like they need to provide schools for, resources for schools, with a budget that helps them, create spaces that not only allows the arts to prosper, but what is the messaging in that arts that they're trying to bring out? What are they assimilating? What are they trying to teach? Because arts is a tool for teaching as well. So I feel children, teachers need to do a better job. They need to be trained. It has to be the school's responsibility to train the teachers, because they're the ones who are besides us as parents, I always say that there are three teachers in the world. There's parents, there's teachers of schools, and then there's community. And if these three sources are neglected, and if these three sources are not equipped with enough resources, enough uh, 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 um, information on how to deal with diversity, inclusion issues, or racist, or how to break racist systems, there's going to be a problem. Kids are not going to learn. This is going to repeat again. The young Stacey is going to do this again in the future because nobody is telling them how to act right, because the teachers themselves don't know how to act right, because the policies in their schools are still racist. And we have a lot of schools here that are founded through slavery, that are founded by slaves, and slaves are founded on the backs of slaves right here in this neighborhood. And I think as a community, we need to hold those schools accountable and say, what have you done ever since you've sat on our great grandparents' backs? What have you done in your own schools to change the policies that you have founded the schools on? So I feel like teachers, they need to change how they teach these lessons at school, and the history books need to be reviewed. I don't know who writes the history book. I need to look deep into that. It's probably somewhere there in Texas, and maybe it's a guy in the same political party who's doing his own propaganda. And history is no longer about actually teaching the kids the truth. It's about, let's just push propaganda, and we need to be careful about that and actually learn with our children and find out what they are learning about, because they've skipped a lot of things in our history books. So I think, ladies, I want to say,
can I say real quick that
yes.
I totally agree with that. I fact check everything with my daughter because I don't know what they're teaching her in school. Right. And I want to make sure she knows her history, her indigenous history, and her Black history. And whatever they're not teaching her, I'm going to teach her about those figures. If you think about it, Malcolm X, they never teach. Growing up, they would never teach about Malcolm X because he was associated with the Black nationalist movement, right? And so they don't want to. They have not been teaching our true history for a very, very long time. And my daughter's going to know. And so I think that's where. I like how you broke down the three different ways that we can educate, almost like this concept of intensive village. But I feel like partnering, if the curriculum is not going to be fixed, partnering with community organizations that can teach this history, that can have literacy and education that really is talking about true Black history and true indigenous history is very, very important and fundamental for our kids. I know myself, you, Stacey, Ro, I don't know if you have kids, but we all have kids. And that's what I think about, as Stacey was saying, just her experience in school with the boy and, the two Staceys. I thought about my daughter, who, when she went to gymnastics practice and she went into this tent thing that they had during open playtime, and there were two little white boys in the tent who left because she was Black, and they said, we can't be around you because you're Black. And that happened when my daughter was 5. And I had to explain that. So this is the reality, and this is the world that we live in when you are Black.
Wow, it's gotta change. It's gotta change.
That's exactly why I write, because I want my history recorded. I want my story written down, and this is why I do journaling workshops. I try to get as many people, young people, as I can to write their own stories, because even if it doesn't go anywhere, if you never publish a book, that's something that your children will have and your children's children will have. We have to tell our own stories, and in line with that, one of the things that we as Black women, as Black people, have to do is we have to start in our own environments telling people what we will and will not tolerate. A lot of times we're so focused on I wrote about how I was so focused on having my baby, and I'm hearing messaging about Black women die more at the hospital than other races, and I had a condition with my pregnancy, and so I was so focused on surviving that experience that I didn't even report when my white nurse was talking about her butt to me and shaking it in my face and telling me, what the sisters told her that she had the badunkadunk, because I'm so focused on.
I saw that story, Stacey. I read that when you. Thank you for putting that out. Thank you for everything you said in that article. But I seen that, and I was just so offended. I know you must have been so offended.
Yeah, but my point is that we prioritize our pain. We prioritize, what's most important. I prioritize. Okay, my baby's healthy. I'm healthy. Does it really matter what she said? But I would go back and tell that other mom, that new mom 9 months ago, yes. Like, all of it matters. Report all of it. So, you have to, we as Black women have to start to demand how we're going to be.
Respect too. Right. So, ladies, I thank you so much, Stacey, for sharing your personal stories here on the show today. I thank you, Adrian, for coming here and giving us your insight and your knowledge and always leading people first. And I thank you, Ro, for coming here and giving us your beautiful sounds and some tips. And also, I wanted to direct people on your end as well to come to follow your music. You'll have music on Spotify as well, right? Am I correct? Yeah. So you guys can look out for Ro at Goodwin Music. Diversity, inclusion, equity, fairness. People want all we're asking is that you treat us fairly, you see us, you recognize that we are all individuals. Just because I'm Black doesn't mean my blackness works for Stacey. You gotta find out what actually works for me as an individual in workplaces, because my religion is not Stacey's, even though we are Black, right? And also, as well as, we have got to pay us what is fair, because we have the experience, we have the know-how, and we have the time and dedication and the talents. So thank you so much, everybody. It was good to have you. Peace out. I love you all.
Babu kondile wendi avuma ukwagi yogi nobo kawu sondela andi butelele awufumina uguba indombi kawu sondela andi butelele awufumina uguba indombi bonane mazweni batandu kuthetha ngawe wendi avuma ukwagi